Happy second week of Lent. Here we still have our ashes. Well, you don't see them now on the forehead because they have been gone. But you know where they are? They're in our heart. Lent is really a beautiful season. It's a season that we can bring God closer in our heart and maybe be a reflection of God's love. So today I'm going to talk about a little recipe I have for Lent for you. This is what I want you to do. Mix well each day. 1 part of faith, 1 part of patience, 1 part of courage, and 1 part of prayer. 1 part of hope, 1 part of inspiration, 1 part generosity, and 1 part kindness. 1 part of a good deed, and always 1 part of meditation. 1 part of sacrifice, it's always going to be there, and 1 part of happiness, there's plenty from God. Season the whole day with a dash of goodness, a sprinkle of joy, a pinch of silence, and a cupful of being transformed. That's what's to happen during Lent, not just at the end of it, but every day. Pour all of this into the vessel of love called you. Cook thoroughly over a radiant, faithful light of spirit. Garnish with a gentle smile and serve with cheerfulness of heart, unconditional love. Now share that recipe with everybody. Now, sometimes in recipes, we add a little teaspoon to it. Some people maybe say, oh, I don't want that much sugar, so they do a little bit less. All of our recipes in life, though, they will fit the day and what our life needs. The recipe I talk about today for Lent is called the recipe of grace, a gift, and a blessing. And all of God's recipes for life have a good person in them. Stir in your personality, your gifts, your successes, your failures, your worries, your celebrations, your decisions, your hopes, your commitments, your laughter, your tears, your sorrow, your joy and your peace. And above all, stir in that teaspoon of love, this teaspoon that believes that God is your strength, God is your understanding and your patience, and God is the moment that helps you to be happy every day. It is one thing to be given life by God. It is another thing to live it in a way that is a tribute to the possibilities that God has given to each one of us. During the season of Lent, especially the second week of Lent, we sometimes think of this recipe and we see that in the recipe of life, there is the cost, a heartache, the broken heart, an illness, a disability, a tragedy, an accident. However, all of us have something in life's recipe that is a challenge, a burden, a hope for better times, and even an inspiration to change. I would like to tell you about a friend of mine who just passed recently. His name is Father Paul Palmietto. He lives in heaven now. Father Paul was a wonderful pastor. Whenever I would run retreats in his parish, he said, Sister Ave, don't worry, I'll get the donuts. And he'd always get an extra box of jelly donuts because he loved jelly donuts. But he had this gentle smile. He always would welcome me and come over at the end and say, I bet the retreat was good. Sorry I was only at the beginning at the end. And he would get his jelly donut at the end of the retreat. Father Paul was diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's disease. He wanted to continue on as best as he could. As the disease started to progress, Father Paul had to step away. It was a tremendous sacrifice for him and for everybody to let go. Sometimes we have to let go of things. Father Paul knew that his diagnosis of Lou Gehrig's disease would take him on a journey of pain and suffering. As he stepped away, he would look at the people and he said, thank you, I loved you. At the end of his farewell mass in the parish that he was leading, everybody got up and cheered Father Paul. And Father Paul looked at everybody. I saw it that day, and I felt his humility of service. That, to me, is what Lent is all about. It's the humility of service. Now, Father Paul is watching over us now. The day after Valentine's Day, Father Paul took his last journey to heaven. I could see him smiling from heaven, maybe holding a golden jelly donut, and Father Paul smiling down and saying, be humble in your service, be loving in your service, but always give service to others. So that is the teaspoon of acceptance and trust and comfort and compassion that we are all to have. Yes, like Father Paul, there will be storms and detours in some of our lives. And along the way, how do we help each other bear the cross together? Stop along the way and be the good Samaritan that takes time. Don't look at your schedule and say, oh, I don't have time for that. Make time for love for each other, to listening for each other. That's called compassion and mercy. So the recipe that we all have in life is the recipe to be loved. And Pope Francis reminds us of this. He says, God is patient with us. He wants us to be patient with one another. Peace comes from God's mercy. Let us be that unconditional gift for one another. Faith does not merely gaze at Jesus, but sees things as Jesus himself sees them, with compassion and wonderful trust. God does not wait for us to come to him. He's always there for us, so he tells us, don't wait for somebody to come to you who has a need. Go to them. Blessed are those who have not seen and believed. That's what we have to do. We have to be the beatitude of faith for one another. So commit yourselves this second week in Lent to the most important thing. Stay faithful on your journey. God will be your strength and hope. And Jesus is the one who will open our hearts. Be the light of Jesus' love. Be the best recipe you can during the second week of Lent. Happy Lent!